It's really an honor to be here with you all today. I have great memories of being in Manila, and I can't wait to get back there at some point when this is all over. In the meantime, this is the next best thing. I'm sitting at home in Singapore. It's the same thing I've been doing since last March. But we do the best we can. And the good thing about being at home all of this time is that I've had a lot of time to think about different things. One of them is, where is the future of rewards going? Where are we headed as a rewards profession? And this all starts from a very simple observation that I had last time I went to a global event around total rewards. And it was that when I first started in rewards, those of us that were in the compensation field were seen within the HR community as the numbers people, as the ones that could crunch numbers, the ones that understood things like regressions and coefficients of determination and very esoteric words that the rest of HR didn't quite manage the way we did. So if you had any prowess with numbers, you ended up doing compensation, which was my case. I graduated in psychology when I first started my career. And after doing a little bit of a stint in industrial relations and a little bit more in OD, somebody discovered that I could do numbers. They gave me engagement surveys to do, and eventually that led into a rewards career. But that, funnily enough, when I was walking around that global event and there were clearly about 400 people or 400 vendors or some such number, I didn't really count, pushing their wares, I realized how little we have progressed in the last maybe 2 decades or so. I think the last innovation that we had clearly in compensation was when we introduced broadbands, which was sometimes in the 80s or early 90s. And if you think carefully about what have we done since, maybe flex benefits and wellness is the next thing that people will come up with. But none of it is numerical. None of it is analytical. And at the same time, our brethren in training have discovered ROI of training, and our brethren in recruiting have discovered the value of analytics to increase the chances of making a good selection of an employee, whereas we in compensation are still struggling to find out where we're headed and how do we take advantage of the numbers. So that led me into this kind of thinking of reimagining employer rewards. And I took out my crystal ball and I concentrated very hard and I tried to peer into the future. And here's what came out. So let me show you what it is. If you can take me to the next slide, please. So in compensation, we're searching for the Holy Grail. You will remember this particular cup as the one from the movie of Indiana Jones, where the Holy Grail was not a very elaborate cup. It was the cup that Jesus the carpenter would have used at the Last Supper. But we are all very intent on finding this Holy Grail. What does it look like? Well, here's what I think it looks like, or at least my attempt at defining that. The first one, please, just hit, is this idea of pay for retention. We, as a profession, are discovering that pay for performance, yeah, okay, but pay for retention matters more because we are measured in great extent to the degree that we are able to lower our turnover rates. And we're also quite clear about the fact that once we find a good person, keeping that person is super important. And yet we still try to talk about retention as if just pay more, instead of rethinking the way we pay so that we do more retention. For instance, I'll give you a clear example about this. If you were to decide to pay with no bonus, okay? I'll do it to you this way. You think about this. And then you put in the chat, which offer would you take? I give you 2 job offers. I'll make it in US dollars just to make it simple. One job offer, I will pay you 250,000 US dollars to join my company. In the other job offer, and I will give you both so you can pick which one. I will pay you $175,000 base with a $75,000 target bonus that could go from 0 to maybe another 125. So you could make anywhere between 175 or 300 with the bonus option, and the bonus depends on your individual performance plus the company's performance. Or you can take the offer that is just $250,000, no questions. Which one would you take? Type it up quickly in the chat so I can get a sense. So I'll give you a minute to do that. 250, the first option. 250, offer A. Only one person I saw that took offer B. Another one took offer B. So you will see that it's not universal. In fact, it would be good to sort of tally this at the end of how many people will take one over the other. In my experience, about 2/3 to 3/4 of anyone that I have ever asked this question of would take the offer with no bonus. Now the question would be, would performance change? And likely performance will not change. What will change is retention. So this is an idea that I think whose time has come. Now, this, I'm going to mix it up with a couple other things that come later, but I just want to illustrate the point that if we were to think about retention as the main thing that we want to do with our reward system, as opposed to performance, we would think differently. We would change pay mixes. And it's not necessarily changing pay amounts, I think, but changing pay mixes. The second one, if you can hit, okay, is the idea of pay for development. Again, the same point. Once we get the person in-house, we want to make sure that we train them to do the best they can. I saw some comments earlier that Tina was referring to about productivity. Productivity is very much linked to development. How do we do that? Well, simple. For instance, the idea that within the salary band, we would pay you higher the more competencies you have is quite straightforward. It's actually quite intuitive. You can separate your salary grade into, say, below the competencies required, at the level of competencies required, or above the competencies required, lower third, middle third, upper third, in a way that you can clearly pay for development and have a clarity around those that have higher degree of competencies are clearly going to get paid better. That encourages people to go to training, encourages people to not just go to the training, but demonstrate that what they learned can be applied at work. The next one would be the idea of, click please, pay for location. This is going to happen. This has already started to happen in America. The idea of pay for location is you get paid according to where you live and not according to where you work. Now that we're all doing this from home, what prevents me from actually moving to Manila and continue to do my job? If I'm going to teach at the university here in Singapore, I don't physically have to be in the classroom. Why can't I do this from anywhere else? As it is, I can tell you for a fact that I use two assistants. One of them is in Bangladesh, and the other one is actually in Manila, not here in Singapore. I pay them Manila rates, and I pay them Bangladesh rates, and I get the work done that I need without ever having to meet them in person. This idea of pay for location is already happening. In America, it is quite clear that if you want to live other than in a big city, the company will say, that's great, you can live there. I'm just going to make adjustments to your level of pay. In China, this could happen very easily because they already have salary grades by city. And this is, I think, something that is going to happen, that pay for location as work gets expanded with the gig economy and the project economy, pay for location will become a normal part of how we do business in rewards. The next one is this idea of pay for productivity. Now, we tend to pay for individual performance. However, the way that we fund the money to pay should be for productivity improvements in whatever area you happen to be in. Again, I always like to illustrate with examples. I did this for one of the banks here in Singapore, one of the 3 major banks here in Singapore. that wanted to say, oh, we want to pay at the same level as our competitors. Now, this is a bank that was slightly behind, to be honest, the other two, not only in levels of pay, but also in levels of profitability. And so the way we designed their compensation strategy was to say, if productivity improves, we'll have more of a bonus pool to increase the level of pay. So what we started to do is have a clear target for HR that said, if we improve labor productivity, half of that labor productivity improvement will be plowed back into salaries. Salaries, not bonuses, salaries. So the idea was basically to say, we will be able to pay better and retain more if we are able to produce the results. Notice what's happening. The results have to be first before we pay. So this is the idea of pay for productivity. You can enhance the level of pay by measuring labor productivity. And that is a key tenet of how we do things. However, that leads us also eventually down the line, we'll talk about that a bit more, into realizing that there needs to be a much better understanding of how we pay and how that links to productivity and profitability improvement. Next one, please. Crypto pay. I don't know if you've been following the news. The crypto is up, and then crypto is down, and then crypto is sideways, and then crypto is all over the place. Crypto will happen. Crypto will happen for one simple reason. It is actually, if you have a global workforce that you're managing, it will actually be simpler to think of pay in crypto than it is to try to think of pay in all local currencies, and how you then have to adjust because of the fluctuation in market rates. It takes a level of risk on the part of the employee being paid. Sometimes you'll be up, sometimes you'll be down. However, as crypto becomes more of what's happening in the world in terms of payments for other things, it will also be part of the world in terms of how we pay people. I've already designed 2 plans that include cryptocurrency, both on incentives. Not surprising, is for crypto-related companies. One is a credit card company, for instance, and their incentives are paid in crypto. Their long-term incentives in the case of one, and all of their incentives in the case of another. They were not quite ready, to be honest, to make the full jump into crypto, all level of pay, but that will happen. I encourage you to become familiar with cryptocurrencies and crypto pay, because it is a tool that it has become a part of our arsenal already, that I don't think we are thinking about just yet, but it will be normal in the not too distant future. The next one, please. Wage gaps. This has now also become quite prevalent, particularly gender wage gaps. We are seeing already some jurisdictions regulating how we hire, and soon we will see a higher, I think, degree of regulation on how we pay. It's interesting because if I ask any single company, do you discriminate? Most companies, actually all companies, will tell me, no, we don't discriminate. We have the same salary guidelines for everybody, and we apply them the exact same way. But it's also quite interesting to see, because I've done this over and over again, that when you actually go look at the difference in the same job level between men and women, there is usually a difference. We, as a rewards profession, have not, I think, dug deeply yet into why this is happening. There are a variety of reasons, and each company can have their own. Part of it has to do with just mindsets. Part of it has to do with how people get promoted. Part of it has to do with how men negotiate versus women. There's all kinds of reasons that have been cited in different places. But in the end, we're going to have to figure out what is happening in our own company, and why are we making this difference, and how are we going to change how this is happening. This is already begun. It's a matter of when will it hit you, and will you be ready when the time comes. Okay, next. I wanted to ask you a question. Also, just yes, no, quickly on the chat. Should you give your employees, or your candidates even, access to salary survey data? Yes or no? I'm quite happy to see more yeses than nos, although I still see a few nos. We have a reputation. If we can go to the next page, please. And just click the first one. No, forward. One more forward. Thank you. We have a, no, you went too far. Okay, don't worry about it. We have a reputation in the rewards field of being priests with black robes hidden in secret rooms with crystal balls trying to, define how people get paid. That's the reputation that we have. Whether we like it or not, we are very secretive about what we do. We think pay is confidential. We think the salary surveys are confidential. How much people are getting paid is confidential. The salary grades are confidential, and everything is confidential. And then we wonder why we have this reputation of being priests in black robes in hidden rooms doing what we do. One of the things that in HR we have always known is that we need to build trust with our employees. It's very hard to build trust with the employees when they think that we hide all the data and that we don't want to show it, because their main reason to think that you're not showing the data is because you don't want them to know that you're actually not telling the truth. That is what they think. So I'm a firm believer that the future will have a very distinct take on this, that in the future, people will have a lot more access to salary data than we currently do. And I want you to prepare for that. By the way, just back to examples, I am currently working here in Singapore. One of my several jobs is to work in the National Council of Social Service. And what I have done is I have published in my website all of my salary guidelines, from top level executives all the way down to white collar workers, everybody. So if you want to go see how I do it, it's simple. It's on a single page. You just type in NCSS, National Council of Social Service, salary guidelines, and you'll see it. It's there, available for any candidate, for any current employee, anyone. Of course, that had some interesting reactions. And some of the reactions were, employees all of a sudden realizing that they're getting underpaid. And heads of HR include, or even EDs and even board members that came to me and said, the clown was the nicest of the things that they would call me because I was creating problems for them. And I told them all the same thing. If you are paying people fairly, which is what you ought to be doing, then none of this should be a problem. However, if you're not paying people fairly, this will be a problem. But the problem is not that I publish the salary data. The problem is that you are not paying people fairly. So let me tell you why I think this is important. First of all, because I think the future of salary surveys is with LinkedIn and similar types of organizations. Just to give you a sense, LinkedIn already has all of the data from the jobs that are posted. They know how much companies are offering, and therefore they don't really need to know salary guidelines. They don't even need to do salary surveys because you're already providing this data to them every time you post a job on LinkedIn. Same thing, it is actually not that difficult for LinkedIn to ask every person looking for jobs on LinkedIn to let them know what is their current level of pay. LinkedIn could easily package and sell this information. The same is true of all of job portals out there. I believe that this is where salary surveys are going to end up. The salary surveys will no longer be a restricted to the Mercers and Hewitts and Willises of the world. It will become much more open. And not only that, it will become much more open to candidates looking for jobs, not just to the companies buying the data. Another thing I think it's interesting to consider is because candidates and employees have access to the data, what does that do to the work of human resources? Well, it's quite straightforward. If you are, like I told the people in my industry, if you're doing the right thing, then that's fine. Often what I have heard is, well, we'll fix it first, we'll communicate later. But it somehow never gets fixed and therefore never gets communicated. I think this is going to work backwards. The communication will happen first. It will be quite apparent, whoever is not doing things right, that they need to fix it, and then they'll work to fix it. I've now been publishing my salary guidelines. This will be the 6th year that I'm going to do it. This coming April 1st, I will publish the next set. It took maybe 4 years to get it under control. Just to give you a sense, on the first year, we had data that said that about 21% of the workforce in the industry was paid below the minimum of the salary guidelines. We moved that number to 16 in 2 years' time, and we moved it to 11 in 4 years' time. I'm waiting to see the next iteration because I only check on actual minimums every 2 years. I'm waiting to see if I'm okay. I think I will be because the salary guidelines did not move last year and they're not moving again this year, although I believe that many people gave increases. So I think there will be an improvement on those numbers as well. So I think it's the communication leads you to improvement. It's not that improvement leads to communication. So I think that's an important thing. And the communication is going to happen whether you like it or not, because it'll happen through LinkedIn and through other folks. And what's also interesting to consider is the blockchain. The blockchain actually allows us to track, in theory, how much jobs are worth and how much people are paid. And if the blockchain is used right, I think that maybe the salary survey folks, this is where they may end up, because the blockchain is a bit more expensive to run than, say, just LinkedIn providing unfiltered information. People can then post what they're making on the chain. Companies can post what their salary guidelines are on the chain. And the information will become not just transparent, as it will be through LinkedIn and others, but reliable. So I think that's the future of salary surveys. It'll be open, it'll be communicated, and at some point the blockchain will come in and give a stamp of approval to what's going on. Next. One point that we also, I think it's important is this idea of skill-based surveys. The more we move into gig and the more we move into project-based and the more we move into, I don't want to work full-time, I want to work part-time. The idea of job is going to start losing somewhat of its meaning. However, we will pay people according to what they know how to do. So at some point, what I think will also start to happen is our current surveys, all of them are based on jobs. At some point, we're going to have to figure out how do we pay for skills. And it's already a problem for us in rewards, because we know that when we're trying to hire somebody, yeah, we have a job and we have a grade, but then we need to have an idea of how much to pay the person within that grade. And then we start making, discussions with the line about, well, they have this much experience and they have this skill that is really important for us that we need to do. And I'll give you an example. We're trying to hire somebody with cybersecurity expertise in the nonprofit sector. There's not very many of them. We found 2. But those 2 people are so rare, so precious, so unique that it's a skill that's worth a lot of money, completely out of our salary range. We had to figure out how much to pay for the skill. Wouldn't it be easier if we already knew how much the cybersecurity skill is worth and then try to make accommodations for the nonprofit sector? I think this is also going to happen. This is important to all of us. We all need to figure out how is it going to be. Next. And tied to the idea of gender equity, one of the important things that is happening is this notion that we are not going to be allowed, when we recruit, to ask a candidate how much they were making before. This will change the way we make salary offers. Therefore, it's going to have a change on us in the rewards world. What I foresee happening is a bit of, we will lowball offers and see if the candidate takes it, and there'll be a lot more negotiation back and forth until candidates are willing to accept our offer. So we won't really be asking how much they're making, but I foresee that what we're going to see in the future is a lot more negotiation back and forth when people apply for jobs. So that's how I think it'll be managed. Next. Another quick question. How much of your workforce do you believe will be either gig or part-time in the next 5 years? Less than 10%, between 10 and 25%, 25 to 40%, more than 40%? Again, same thing, just type it up on the chat. Okay. Predictably, many of you feel that there's not going to be any change. Good for you. But also predictably, a large proportion of you feel that it's going to increase. That is also going to change the way we pay. So if we can move to the next page and just go one more. One of the things that we need to have a lot more clarity about is how do we create specialist career tracks? Because this specialist career tracks will have a direct impact on how we pay part-timers, how do we pay gig people, and how do we then accept the fact that not everybody wants to be a boss? We also may not need as many bosses, because if you have more gig and project employees, you may not need so many managers. So specialist career tracks will become important. I'm fascinated, again, using examples, by conversations that I've had, and I was just in a executive education class that I was teaching this past Wednesday with one of the largest companies here in Singapore. And it's an engineering company. And it was funny what they were saying, that for the first time in their lives, these directors are basically saying, you know, people don't want to get promoted. People don't want to be bosses. They just like what they're doing in engineering. They just want bigger projects. They want more complex projects, but they don't want to be a manager. They think being a manager takes them away from what they love, which is engineering. I think those people that don't want to be managers, that really love what they do in a technical sense, eventually the competition is not going to be necessarily your competitor. The competition is going to be them setting themselves up as an independent worker and selling you their time. Also this week, I was having coffee with somebody that was looking to change their career track. And what she had in mind was exactly this. What she basically said is, I don't want another job. What I want is to set myself up so that I can sell my expertise to as many people as possible. And she wasn't thinking of being a consultant. She was thinking of doing projects that are part of what the company needs. So she's just selling her brain, her arms, her legs. She is not selling, you know, a consulting methodology. This is going to happen. We're going to have to worry about this a lot more than we do. Many companies still rely on single salary guidelines. You're going to have to think long and hard, what are you going to do with specialists? Next. Another idea that has been quite interesting is this idea of gig workers and project pay, because when you ask the gig worker, what is it that they want more than anything else? Or conversely, what is it that they miss the most from working in a big company? The first thing they'll tell you is benefits. They would like better benefits, because when you're on your own, you have to buy your own benefits. The cost is very high. So one of the things that I think is worth considering, and I've done this already once in Latin America, is this idea of benefits for performance. What does that look like? Well, if you do it for people in the company, you can basically say, if you are a high performer, you can have, say, more free days, more holidays. Or if you're a top performer, you can have a better copay in your insurance. Or if you're a higher performer, we have a better match on your pension plan. So you can actually increase the level of benefit. In the case of a gig worker, you may even say, I will give you 1 year of life insurance for each additional year that you work for us, up until 3 years of life insurance eligibility. This is the kind of idea that I also think is important to start considering, because to pay a gig worker extra cash that they're just feeling that they're going to waste by buying more benefits, not so important. But if you give them access to the company's benefits, and then you can make the deal sweeter by adding additional benefits, not only do you get them to work for you longer, you get them to work with you better. So that's an idea also that I think should be put into your thinking caps. Next. Last segment. Be honest with this one. Which of the current pay-for-performance schemes that you have actually works? And what I mean by actually works is actually makes people work better, harder? 1, 2, 3, or 4? I hope you are all taking a look at the answers in this one. It's all over the place. All over the place. Now, here is the last point that I want to make today. We should know this. We should have clarity about this. We should have very clear indications of how much better performance is because of A or B or C. Next page, please. And click once. Thanks. I have lots of problems with how we do pay for performance in the majority of companies. Mostly they have to do with a very simple concept. And the simple concept is that we take it as dogma. We take it as faith. We take it as, of course, everybody knows that pay drives performance. However, again, from experience, when I ask any one of my HR colleagues, and this includes all of you, when was the last time that you yourselves, before making a decision, thought about, oh, I'm going to decide this because my bonus is going to get better? You see, salespeople always do this. Salespeople will say that if I do this or don't do that, how will my pay be affected? But we don't. Most of the people that you will talk to in a non-sales role actually don't work for the bonus. So there's a few things about this that are important. First one, let me tell you about SMART objectives. And you'll see that I put in an asterisk on the A under SMART. All of the research, okay, and I don't want to get too academic on you, but all of the research basically says that the S, the M, the R, and the T are true. Those are okay, but the A is not. When we say attainable, the interpretation of attainable has always been can be done. When the first people that put in, or at least the more famous ones, which was GE, put in the idea of SMART objectives, to them the A was not attainable. To them the A was amazingly difficult, almost impossible. Stretch targets. Stretch targets work. SMART targets, as we know them, don't work. And you know that for a fact, because when you go to the company and you see that everybody has SMART objectives and that you have to end up then calibrating the curve, which makes everybody upset because everybody feels that they met or even exceeded some of their targets, but you still have to make them go back to being, meets expectations type of performance. What you've done is you've created a lot of angry people. The bonus, therefore, it's not motivating anybody. It's making a lot of people upset. But the people that outdid their targets, most of them would have done it anyway. And remember your answer before that you said, I'll take the 250,000 as opposed to the one with bonus. A good number of you thought that way. A good number of employees in your company right now think that way, which leads us into thinking, can we do better analytics as to how do we set targets? How do we set targets that only 10 to 20% of the people are going to attain? That's a key problem. That's our problem. That's our compensation problem, because we need to figure out the pay for performance part. We can't just stick to the pay. We need to figure out what performance looks like. Next. Benefit selection is also something that analytics can help. Again, with examples. You all may know about conjoint analysis. Conjoint analysis is a way to do analytics that helps you figure out what would people choose over what. Benefits is a very interesting case of using conjoint analysis, because what you can do with conjoint is figure out what would people prefer over different stages of their life. So you can define benefit packages that have higher preference at lower cost, or same preference at lower cost, or higher preference at same cost. Very simple to do, actually. it takes a lot longer to define the exact way to do the package than it does to run the statistics on it. But this is quite an important way to do it, because you can save a ton of money on your benefits if you get better at what is it that people want. And right now we don't do that. Right now we let people self-select. Right now we, best case is we have a flex program and people can choose. We can do one better. We can pre-package it in a way that people can select whole packages as opposed to each individual thing, and lower our costs even further without any loss in the perceived value that people have. So analytics can help us do that. Next. Flexible pay. We already do flex benefits. Why can't we do flexible pay? I'll take you back again to your answer. Some of you said 250, some of you said 175 plus bonus. So why couldn't we do both? The people that don't want the bonus, we don't pay them that way. The people that do want the bonus, we pay them that way. Right now, the only reason we don't do it is we say, oh, that's too complicated. We have computers to do this. It isn't true that everybody needs to be paid the exact same way. It isn't. So if we are perfectly happy to accept the fact that people want different benefits at different stages of their life, why can't we accept the exact same logic to say that people want different pay at different stages of their life? I know that when I was younger, I thought I could bet on anything. I would have taken a lot more bonus percentage in my mix when I was younger. And I always thought I was going to win. Nowadays, I'm not too sure. Nowadays, it's different. Same idea as flex benefits, but with flex pay. And computers can allow us to do all of this. Next. And the last point I want to make about which system actually works is that we don't know which system actually works. Let me give you a little bit of background on that. The research shows that in order for merit pay to make a difference, in other words, how much of a difference will make in how people work to gain the differential amount in merit pay. The research says that it takes about 11% difference in pay, 11% difference in pay before people are willing to work harder. Normally, our differences in one merit rating to the next merit rating are in the range of about 2 to 3%, depending on the country. Most people don't work for the merit. They don't. They work for the bonus, maybe, but not for the merit. Now, does it work better if you have a 80-20 mix or a 70-30 mix or a 90-10 mix? We don't know. We tend to just look at the market data. If the market pays 80-20, we pay 80-20. Why? Shouldn't we do it different? And how much different? And how do we know if it's working better? How do we know if this achieves better productivity than the competitors? We don't know that. We also don't know how much, for instance, is a stock option better than a restricted share, or is a restricted share better than a performance share in long-term incentives? We don't know. We truly don't know. Analytics should help us decide this. We should be able to figure out with different pay mixes, how will people behave? And if we don't want to do it with real data, we can simulate the data, have samples of employees run through them, figure out how different pay motivates people differently, and then pick the one that you think is going to produce the better results for your company. Analytics can help us do this. Right now, we truly don't know. Which takes me to my last page, or at least my takeaways. The key point I'm going to tell you is that I have found it, and I've been doing this now. This is my 40th year of doing rewards. I have found that there is never a single system that works for everybody. That we believe there are, that pay for performance is universal. But when you dig under the surface, when you actually look at the data, it's not as universal as we think. And in fact, most people don't perform because of pay. So to try to do that and create a single system that works for everybody will be very, very difficult. So instead, what I recommend is that you think about the following. Click. Team incentives work much better than individual incentives. All past experience has shown that every company wants the team to win, and yet we pay individuals. And all of the research shows that team incentives work and individual incentives does not. Every time you have individual incentives, even if you have shared part individual, part team, because the part that people control is the individual part, that's the part they worry about, and they hope the team thing happens by itself. My recommendation in all of the research I have done and I have read say exactly the same thing. If you're going to have incentives, make incentives for the entire team. And of course, the question then comes up, oh, what if somebody is dragging their feet? Then get rid of them. You should be able to know. The supervisor should know who is dragging their feet and get rid of them. Don't create individual bonuses because it creates disincentives. For the most part, this is what happens. And you know this to be true, and yet we still believe in the dogma. The good performers, the ones that are carrying everybody else, next year they go, why work so hard? The bad performers know that they don't have to do anything and still, so also why work so hard? Team incentives, that's the answer. Next one. I've given you a variety of things to think about. The key is not, a buffet and let's pick what looks good in the menu. The key is use the analytics approach. Which one actually works better for your company in your current circumstances? So I do not advocate that there's a best way to pay for every company. No, I only advocate that every company has to find the best way to pay their employees that suits their culture and their demographics. Next. Which takes me to this point, which is where I started. This whole thing started by thinking, why is it that we in the rewards world were considered to be the numerical guys, and we are the ones that use analytics the least? We need to change this. We need to find a way to become far more analytical in our reward space to be able to demonstrate the value that we add, not just in attracting, in retaining, but also in motivating our employees. Next. If you're interested in anything that I had to say, I welcome any of your comments. I know that there's a lot of stuff here on the chat and a few things on the Q&A. If you click on the QR code, it will take you directly to my research on pay for performance. What type of pay scheme is best for achieving business results? I hope you find that interesting. Please download it. It's free. And if you want to have a chat, you have a question to ask separately at any point in the future, I'm on LinkedIn under Fermin Diaz PhD, or you can just write me an email at fermin@fermindiaz.com.